What's going on, everybody? This is Chris from the Remote Work Academy. Super excited to get going today. This is so far our highest registered for conversation, which is super cool to see. We have John Peterson here from The Nudge. We're going to dive into this in terms of communicating with your customers, figuring out the best way to talk to your customers, especially in this, new age of uncertainty, which hopefully resolves itself soon enough. But it's important to think about how you do that communication. But before we dive in, I would love to, what's going on, Amy? We got Jessica, Gary. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from, because a lot of what John does at The Nudge is very city specific. So it would be cool to see what cities we got on here. Steve, Mike, how's it going, everybody? Just let us know in the comments. I am in Austin, Texas. John, you're in San Francisco?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Let's see where people are coming. We got Las Vegas, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Frankfurt, Germany. Awesome. Kansas, Dallas, Texas. What's up, neighbor? Sao Paulo, Brazil, Phoenix. We got an international crowd. West Virginia. Awesome. Let us also know what you guys do for business. What is your business? Are you guys online? Are you a brick and mortar company? Let us know that stuff too. Helps us know who we're talking to. Get to know everybody. But let's dive into it. I've been very excited about this conversation. So I first discovered The Nudge maybe like 4 weeks ago, which I guess equals about a month, from a coworker. And then it basically spread virally throughout our office. But John, do you want to give a bit of a background on what The Nudge is before we go into it?
Yeah, so The Nudge is a family of text message-based lifestyle advisors. Most people are familiar with the ones that we do that are city programs. So we market those as a planner friend in your pocket. It texts you several days a week, basically trying to mimic a real life kind of friend. So it's thinking about the weather, what's going on in your life, what's going on in your city, and basically planning things for you and texting you. What a lot of people don't know about is we also have these text-based programs for other parts of your lifestyle. So we've done fitness ones, we've done Whole30-based diet ones,
Cool.
And there's a lot more to come there in the future.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing I would love to know in the comments. So The Nudge, it's the personal planner in your pocket. We all are that person or have that person in our friend group. Let me know. Is that you or is that somebody, one of your friends? Let us know their name. You can just do first name. For me, it is Giles. I have this buddy who is just constantly on all of the Facebook groups. He's on like Do 512, which is an Austin website for like all of the events going on. He's always putting everything together. But that's a tough one to do. So having The Nudge in your pocket, putting all of this stuff together is super helpful. So let us know. Is that you or is that a friend of yours? But where did this, so I know last time we were talking, you were saying that this it morphed and pivoted and there were a lot of kind of MVP versions of The Nudge before you guys settled on doing the text message based for events in different cities. So what was the evolution of it?
So it was all about trying to mimic the value of a planner friend. So initially it was a website that was a user-generated content platform where anyone in the city who is a planner friend has a Google Sheet with all these plans to basically go on there and use a tool to publish these itineraries. So they're going on and publishing dates, they're publishing hikes, weekend trips. It was a website, then it was also an app. And what we found was that content-wise, people loved it. People do want a plan more than an idea, and that's more helpful for them. Mm-hmm. But in terms of actually changing people's routines, it wasn't really working. So people would say, oh yeah, I love it, but I'll check it like once every 2 months when a friend is in town. And I was talking to my sister who she's now co-founder of The Nudge. She was working for Apple in Munich at the time. And she was like, I'm the planner friend for my friend group of expats in Munich. And I don't give my friends a website. That would require that they have to think to visit the website. I text them, I interrupt their routine, I have made choices for them, and I just give them one thing. Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of like the next pivot, which was, what if there was no platform at all? What if we took this planner friend analogy one step further? There's no platform, we make choices for you, and we text you like a friend. And that did really well when we were piloting it. We actually we did a pilot comparing that to an email version of it, meaning like no platform, we just email you things. We had a calendar version, or an integrated calendar you could add. We made a Slack bot, Facebook Messenger bot, push notifications. And the text one just took off like more than 10x in terms of engagement. And the way people talked about it was like, well, you're like a planner friend, you know, in my pocket. Whereas the email people are like, oh, this is a really cool newsletter for things to do. And so since then, we've just progressively leaned more and more and more into this idea of like being a planner friend. So in our office every day, it's like, would a friend do that? You know, people are always shutting down ideas in a good way, being like, a friend would never do that. And this is like, we may get into this, and this has become really relevant today with, you know, all the crazy stuff that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting how you tested it out and you're like, okay, we could do it through email. That's kind of the traditional route to do it. Or we try out doing it text-based, because that's what, you know, if you're trying to mimic it as close to reality of what a friend would do, that's the way to do it. And the nudge just kind of feels like, to me, it's like wheels on a suitcase, where in hindsight, it makes total sense. Why did it take so long for something like this? But you guys like made that transition and did it. And you said the metrics were like basically the engagement that you were seeing was a lot higher. And then just people, the way they were responding to it. Because was it paradox of choice? Is that why nobody, like, they liked it, but nobody was acting on it? Like, what do you think were those big things that were preventing the email from working?
Interrupting people's routines is really, really hard. I think retention is hard, right? For most businesses, retention is the most important thing, and it's the hardest thing to create. And I think people go about it two ways. There's the pull way, where you create mechanisms that cause people to constantly think about what you're doing. So obviously, like, Instagram is the ultimate example of this. You know, if I'm in a line, you know, if I'm sitting on the couch, if I'm waiting for something, they've just created this habit loop in my head to check Instagram. So there's like this pull mechanism. I don't really use push notifications there, but I guess. Or there's push, where, you know, you're trying to interrupt someone by sending them an email or a push notification. And we never wanted to go the pull route, just because the nudge is all about getting offline. So building a feed that people are addicted to is like not of any interest to us. But the push route was where we needed to go. And the problem is that, like, emails and push notifications, just as they have become so prolific, are almost a whisper now. You know, like, email, I'm sure email open rates have declined over time. Like, approval of push notifications have declined over time. And we knew that. We tried those things and they just weren't very effective. And so text was, you know, we didn't even know if it was legal or allowed. It was kind of like this thing where, like, can we text people? And no one was really doing that. And even like just, you know, 2 years ago or so, like, it seems very common now, but I had never been texted by a company before we started thinking this was the nudge. And so, yeah, text is just, it's as a push mechanism, it gets people's attention far more effectively. It comes with a lot of unique challenges, but it's just really effective at getting in front of people.
I imagine one of the reasons why a lot of companies like email is because there's this idea where, like, we need to give different options for different people because we don't know if they're into this or into this. And you guys don't, from what I recall when I signed up, there's no segmentation or anything like that. Is there? And then how do you think about, like, what goes on there? So if somebody's into, like, one person likes going out to bars and drinking, the other person likes rock climbing and not drinking, like, how do you think about the variety of customers and how you speak to them?
So when we started, we assumed we would have to segment people, because you would imagine everyone's into different things. You know, we can't tell everyone in the city to do the same thing at the same time. Like, that would be crazy. And so what we did is we did segment people early on. So we introduced a feature at some point where we said, hey, what are you into? You know, are you into hikes? Are you into live music? Are you into creative dates, weekend trips? You could tell us what you were into. We would basically create different segments and send different content. And then what was interesting is people hated that. People wanted it, they requested it, but when we created it, they would say, oh yeah, this is really cool, but, like, can I get the other ones too? Like, my friend got one about this concert, you know, like, can I get that too? And what we realized, interestingly, was that for us, personalization was a trade-off against community. So, like, everyone receiving everything at the same time was really like this community experience. Like, one way that I think about it to try to relate to is, like, you know, The Hustle, for example. As far as I understand, The Hustle is a scam, these email newsletters that are really popular. I'm getting the same one as my coworker, and we talk about them. But if they all of a sudden started to segment me, like the community element of getting the hustle and talking about what's on there would go away. And so we ultimately decided that community was more important to us. And the original hypothesis that people are super different actually wasn't as true as we thought. Like most people are into hiking, most people are into creative dates, most people are into going on more weekend trips. So that's kind of how we navigated personalization.
I think that's a fascinating point, because I don't think I've ever heard somebody make that point. It is always segment, break the user down into the smallest possible niche so you can like communicate directly one-on-one with this one person and collect as much data and information on them so it can be as hyper targeted as possible. And you guys just went in the completely different direction where like, no, let's speak to everybody exactly the same, because like 80% of everyone is about the same, interested in similar things, and we want that community. And then thinking about, this is one of the things we were talking about on a talk yesterday, is how do you, man, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Yeah, how do you think about your product in the context of like your user's life? And so nobody's consuming your product just in isolation. They're consuming it in their life, whether it's in the morning or the afternoon or at work or through their email or their desktop. And you guys are thinking like, okay, how do people talk about the things that are going on? And how can we create that shared experience offline outside of our app? I think that's, or I guess it's not an app, it's through the text. But man, that's fascinating. I don't know. Do you have anything else there? I'm so curious about that. Like how you guys came to that. Was it just the user feedback that was coming through and you're like, well, what if we didn't do any segmenting at all?
Yeah, well, we started with no segmenting because we just, we were just testing this thing and we wanted to see if it worked, and then it was working. And people still ask for it today, not knowing that we already tried it and like people ultimately rejected it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, well, one thing that's really great about text and that I think is a little different for email is that people reply back unprompted all the time with feedback. So whenever I've done in like past lives, done email marketing, getting like unsolicited, like really rich feedback sent back would happen occasionally, but not that often. Whereas like when we send a nudge text to everyone, like we're getting hundreds of replies. People love it, people hate it. And we really lean into that. We have mechanisms that like auto-engage with people to sort of tease out more detail about like what they liked or didn't like. And so we know like when we do something bad, it's very, very obvious. And so when we did that, it was like people started to realize they were being segmented. And yeah, they would just be like, hey, like, can I just get all of them? And the answer is no, like we don't want you to get too many texts because we know it would get annoying for you even if you say you want it. But it just purely came from the users.
That's awesome. That's super interesting. And yeah, because I imagine with getting that feedback, it's like most people are probably sending 10 times as many texts a day as they're sending an email. And it's just so much more built into their routine to they receive a message, they respond to a message. But email, it's like you're mostly just getting flooded with so many more emails than you're ever going to respond to. So again, looking at it in context of like who your user is and where are you interacting with them, like in their lifestyle.
Yeah, context is everything. And that's just something that was really obvious, like going from someone who had a website doing push notifications and emails to sending text to people. And people just, like, text is a personified medium. People aren't really used to companies texting them. People don't really want companies to text them. And so that's something we really thought a lot about when we made that transition, which is like, you can't just take what you're doing via email and make it shorter and send it via text, because an email newsletter via text is not a thing. And this is something I've noticed a lot of, like text-based communication is really common. And it's something I notice a lot of companies do wrong, is that I see the text they send me and I'm like, this is just their email, but they made it shorter. But like, text is not that kind of medium, right? Text is the medium for friends. Text is the medium for coworkers. And the way people communicate in that medium is totally different. And so we had to adapt the way we communicate too. So just try really hard to like feel like a friend rather than, an email, newsletter, and text.
Yeah. And that's got to be a really tricky thing to navigate, I would think, because in someone's texts are so much more intimate than someone's email. Like you'll throw your email address on anything to download anything and get whatever coupon. And I think a lot of people just have a certain email address that is just flooded with junk versus people don't have, for the most part, multiple phone numbers. And so giving out your number, I imagine you guys feel like a tremendous amount of responsibility where it's like, this is a really intimate connection with somebody, much more so than an email. And like, how do we really wield that power responsibly?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Text is a sacred space. People in general don't want to be texted by a company. And so trust is always important, but much more important there. One thing we learned early on is like, if you want to text people, trust, in my opinion, and the opinion of our company, is built through mutual understanding. So like we prove that we understand you by talking to you in ways that show we understand your life and you understand us and how we operate. So for example, people don't really trust Facebook because Facebook doesn't explain how their algorithms work. Facebook doesn't want us to know what's going on behind the scenes. Whereas with the nudge, like if we want people to trust us, they have to know what we do. It's like the first text we send you is like, hey, here's how this works. Like we have a team of people, we get together every week, we think about what's going on in your city, and then we plan things for you and send you texts about them. Now there's another way of doing that where we don't explain how we operate at all. And it's like, hey, like, welcome to the planner friend in your pocket. You'll get your first nudge soon. And that doesn't build trust, right? That might sound something that someone who's, has a traditional marketing role would want to say. But text is just so different. Like trust is everything, or people unsubscribe so easily. It's necessary.
Yeah, there's this book I read called Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. And one of the points he makes is like, every piece of data you collect from a customer, they should know what you're like, why you're asking that and what you're going to do with it. And like, they should be able to see the benefit of that very soon. But a lot of companies, like you're saying, whether it's Facebook or whoever, they're just constantly collecting more and more on you and like throwing surveys at you, and you never quite know how it's going to come back. And it's like, well, why do you need all of this? And you guys are just very upfront. It's like, hey, we get together every week, we put together this stuff, and we want to know what you're into so we can, make it as good as possible. Something I would love to talk about that we've talked about a little bit before is the idea of, you guys don't have a content calendar, you have a customer calendar or a subscriber calendar, or how you guys think about like what we're going to put out and how do we plan that and how do we see things through our customers' eyes. Do you consider them customers, by the way, or what do you guys refer to them as?
We consider them members.
Members. Okay.
Yeah. Or we call them nudgers, but in an abstract sense, they're members. Yeah, so that's a good question. And it starts with the trust thing we were just talking about, which is if you want to build trust by demonstrating that you understand your members, you have to say things that prove that you get what's going on in their world. So with the nudge, it was like, okay, a friend, like if I'm chatting with a friend, they're making references to things that are going on in my life. They understand the kinds of things I'm into that I'm not into. They know what's going on in the weather. And so with the nudge, it was like, okay, how do we demonstrate that with people? And so instead of a content calendar, we have a customer calendar, which we call the POV, for point of view calendar. And so our city directors, what they're doing is they're laying out a calendar of like what is going on through the heads of our members, like today, but also throughout the next month in very great detail. And this is before we think about what we're going to send them. We're just like creating a map of where they're at. And so it's, I'm just making stuff up, but it would be like, yeah, people are starting to like go a little stir crazy. Some people might be settling into a nice little home routine. Some people probably aren't. They may be having mental health issues related to what's going on. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's frustrating. They're checking the news too often. Oh, it's 90 degrees in Austin right now, but I can't, go to the water really. Or maybe I can. I'm not really sure what's okay. And so they're just like mapping all this out. Like April Fool's is coming up, but no one's even thinking about that. And so this is just a starting point for creating nudges for any program that we do, whether it's like things you do in the city or fitness. Is first it's like, you've got to know where people are at. And then you create things that are catered to that. And so then it's, they've created this POV calendar And then they come to the team and basically pitch us and say, okay, given this POV for every day in the next couple of weeks, here's what I think people need. And so what that allows us to do is not only send people things that are relevant to them, but talk about them in ways that build trust. We've already thought about, we're sending you this thing because you're going stir crazy. And so when we text you, we mention the first part too. So the first, sentence of every text is usually about you. It's like, hey, you're going stir crazy right now, blah, 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 blah. So we created this thing as a solution for you. And that's sort of end to end how that works.
Mm-hmm. I would love to, if you don't mind, read some of these messages that I've gotten from the Nudge during this new situation with Corona, because I was talking with our head of content at AppSumo, and we were just saying how well you guys did it. So the first one we got, and if people want to see, they start with a GIF and then you have the text that comes through. And it's, hey, Chris, our team spent the last few days discussing how we can help nudgers stay safe and positive. So future nudges will help you, 1, take advantage of our extra at-home time, 2, get fresh air while social distancing, 3, connect with friends responsibly, and 4, support the Austin community and its efforts. Coronavirus is canceling a lot, but it can't cancel our relationships and our love for ATX or our ability to live fulfilling lives. If you have any questions, please text us. We're in this together. And then later on, we got a text asking lots of questions on social distancing. Like you were saying, like what can we do while this is going on? We're putting experts together for you, sharing great information on all of this. And then the spring cleaning one I thought was really good too, where it was basically yesterday was the first day of spring, and given our circumstances, it's basically our destiny to spring clean this weekend. And then kind of just went through different playlists you could listen to, drinking tea or wine, Marie Kondoing your wardrobe. I think it was a perfect way of you guys maintaining your brand, maintaining like I'm curious how you would describe like the voice of your brand, but it's like, it's uplifting, it's a little tongue in cheek, but it's also just like, it has that like, you're just friend who puts this stuff together. And so you're meeting people where they're at and also giving some levity to it without denying or hiding or exploiting the fact of what's going on right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you asked about voice of our brand. I would describe it as a relatable friend who you look up to, who believes in your best self. So like we're a friend who you could just go grab a beer with at the most basic place possible, but we're also recondoing our wardrobe to stay productive, during sheltering.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the friend who's just like always a little bit one step ahead of you, and it's like, they got this thing going on, I should be doing that too. But it's never. Yeah, one of the ones I got a while ago was like, hey, there's going to be a great sunset in Austin today, so here's your plan. 5 p.m., go to this bookstore. Here's a list of 5 books that we think are going to be great. Then get to this location. You can park. I thought it was so awesome that you guys even said where to park. It's like, you can park here. It's only $2.70 an hour. Then you're going to go here, watch the sunset, and yeah, it's just it's super cool. If you guys aren't on the Nudge, check out the Nudge. You want to go over what cities you guys are in for folks?
Yeah, we're in San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, and New York. We were planning to be in 3 more cities over the next couple of months, but that's on pause at least until things get until the future is a little more clear. But that's where we are today.
Yeah. And so what are some of those lessons that you would want to say to people? Well, I guess let's start with like the SMS versus email side of things, and who should and shouldn't be doing that.
Sure. So SMS, I think everyone should try it. I mean, the engagement rate has the potential to be 10x what you're doing via email, or higher than that if you're comparing like a click rate of something you send in a text to the click rate of something you send in an email. However, I think it's not easy. It takes a lot of work to get it right. You have to have a lot in place to prove that people should trust you already. You do have to think about, like, I'm not just translating my email marketing to a text. I need to think about, the context and the way I'm telling the story a little bit differently. I need to really think about where people are at. And so, yeah, like if I was doing another business and I needed to use marketing channels to get people to pay attention to things that are going on with me, I would try text. Mm-hmm. Again, the challenge is just getting it right isn't easy. as I mentioned, but it's worth trying for sure.
Do you have any of those kind of stories of maybe a text that went wrong or just didn't get the reaction or land the way you guys were thinking about it?
It's hard for me to think back to what our texts were like in our earliest days. Oh yeah, actually I can say. Okay, so we're very like principle and process oriented companies. So we basically have like this Bible of like, here are the principles and how we create our text. Here are the principles and how we think about the POV calendar, all this stuff. And we're just constantly updating that. And this is like, we're trying to institutionalize everything that we do. And one thing we added to that since we started was, does this sound like a marketing email? So like, would a friend say this thing, or does it sound like a marketing email? I think people who are creative and people who are marketers have a tendency to, they have a lot of creativity, and like and a marketing email is this canvas to display that. And there's sort of like, there aren't a lot of rules there, you know, you're just trying to be unique and trying to get someone's attention. And I think that can actually backfire via text. So for example, like the sunset text you were talking about, in the past, we might have opened up that text with like, you know, the Lion King, like, you know, like all written out, you know, the Oz and Venga, like whatever that thing is. And that's what we might have done previously in an email. But like a friend isn't going to do that, you know. A friend's going to be like, hey, Chris, do you want to watch the sunset? And so even though it's like, it hurts a little bit to pull back on some of these like really creative ideas, you just kind of have to, because the brain that wants to create like a really compelling marketing email is just like a different brain than the one that is going to do text properly.
Yeah. It's interesting how you guys, like, everything you do seems to just be deprogramming from tradition, and not even traditional marketing, but like modern day marketing, but digital marketing online. It's like, hey, segmenting, maybe if we do zero segmenting, trying to be as clever as possible to get clicks, maybe if we do the opposite and we just try to speak like a normal human being. Do you see this as like a huge untapped market that a bunch of people are now going to start pouring into, or you just think like it's not going to catch on even though it should, and this is just kind of this like black hole you guys are able to operate in and take advantage of?
It's catching on. There are a lot.
Yeah.
New text-based services are popping up all the time, and people are doing all kinds of, you know, using it in a lot of different ways. So I think it's catching on, and the question then is, how will Apple and Google respond to this? Are they going to, do they want to navigate text to become like email, where all of a sudden they're empowering people to create like folders in their texts, you know, and have like a promotions tab and another tab? I don't think they'll do that. I think what they'll do instead is actually like clamp down on it and make it really, really easy for people to unsubscribe from text messages, which is what I want. Like, you know, I think it should stay that way, where like the bar is really, really high so that it doesn't become oversaturated. But what I think is more common to happen is, yeah, like people are pouring into the space, so they make it harder for you to get in there. So like, you know, if you text someone from a short code, which is like, you know, these 5-digit numbers that you get text from like delivery services and stuff, you know, maybe it'll have a prompt that's automatically up, like, you know, do you want to block this? This number. That's what I think will happen, but certainly it's proliferating.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Like, how it would be better to have the highest bar possible so it maintains its integrity, and then the best people like yourselves, then it's like, okay, less competition for us here because we're doing it well. We don't have to be concerned about that. And I think that applies to a lot of different things. It's like, if you guys are the best at what you do, you should invite more of that type of stuff to set the bar higher, because you'll ideally always meet or exceed that. And you guys do a lot of little things right too. Like one of the things that I thought was so cool is on the first text, you guys sent a contact card with an image for the nudge so like, hey, just make sure you click here to add us to your contacts list. So instead of when you get like a UPS tracking notification or something like that, and it's just a random number that's texting you. Now, every time you see that it's the nudge, you have the image that you guys have pre-selected for it. And it's just like a lot of those little things that I think you guys work in really well that make it that friend in your pocket. It's like, yeah, you don't have your friends as just a random number. It's like you have them saved in your contact book.
Yeah, absolutely. It blows my mind when I see tech services that don't do that. And it just shows me that like people still don't really get it. They don't get that like this medium needs to be thought of differently. It's a medium for fans. It's not a medium for marketing emails.
Yeah. What are, getting a bit more tactical, what are some of the tools you would recommend for people as they're doing this, if they wanted to try it out with their audience and say like, okay, we want to test out SMS and kind of split test that with our emails? Like, how would you recommend they get started? What tools would you recommend?
Well, it's been a while since we were so we have like a lot of proprietary stuff in-house now. So like the landscape of what's available to send SMS, I think is very different than when we were doing it. So when we started, we were using this like a relatively expensive service called like Easy Text, I believe, where it's literally like you upload a CSV file into their website and then you can just send text to those, similar to maybe like MailChimp for text. What's more popular are like, services like Twilio or MessageBird, where it does require a little bit of coding to integrate, but it's just like an API you can hit to send a text to essentially anyone from your own system. But if I wanted to do like a low bandwidth test, I would honestly just Google like SMS services, and I'm sure there's tons of them now that are basically just like MailChimp for text.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. If anybody has any questions about that, let us know in the Q&A box. In terms of communicating now with customers, so I imagine everyone on here has seen just an email from every single company that you've ever subscribed to coming in with their COVID-19 email. And a lot of them sound very, very similar. And so for people who are trying to navigate this and they're like, hey, we need to still talk to our customers. We don't want to ignore this because it's the only conversation that people are having all day long. And at the same time, we don't want to seem like we're just, coming in and being like, hey, COVID, buy this. So what would you kind of recommend? Are there any principles or ideas or frameworks for people to follow as they're thinking about like they're sitting down to write their next email? Maybe they're trying to sell a product or something like that. How should you be authentic during like a time like this?
Yeah, I think you have to demonstrate that you understand. I just go back to like how we think about POV.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was trying to sell a clothing line right now, I would try to just really try to like build trust in this moment where like trust is so important and it's so easy to backfire and come across as out of touch. My marketing there would start with talking about you, not talking about me. So I think like this is something I see a lot is companies are like, here's what we're doing, here's what's going on with us. And for 90% of the emails I get, I'm like, I don't care. Like you have nothing to do with COVID-19. You're trying to take advantage of this moment, but it's not working because you're talking about you. So if I was selling a clothing line, like I would start talking about the customer first. And I would think a lot about who they are and like what's going through their head. I would talk to them if I don't know the answer to that. And so maybe the answer for my clothing line is like, I'm not thinking about buying clothes right now. I'm thinking about how long I'm going to be stuck at home. I'm thinking about, I don't know what to do this weekend. I'm thinking about like my friend is sick and I'm scared. And so I would start with that, and it's hard, right? Like, where do you go from that to trying to market this thing? But maybe I would just be like, look, like, maybe your product and the way you think about it needs to change a little bit, So maybe it'd be like, look, you're probably not thinking about clothes right now. You're probably stressed about all this other stuff. Like we get that. We're not going to like market this to you right now, but we do have this new clothing line. So if you do care, like, fill out this form and we'll remind you about it in 2 weeks. Or maybe it's the same thing and it's like, but if you are interested and you do need a distraction right now to get off the news and go back to the days when all we thought about was clothes, like this option is for you. But I started talking about you, and I'm not pushing it too hard. I'm leaving open the door to the reality that you might just not care about what I'm trying to sell right now.
Yeah.
But I think paradoxically that will convert more than being pushy.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. That's one of the ways we've always tried to look at it at AppSumo when we were writing our emails is every time I would get stuck or I would try to write it like too clever or too flowery, Eamon, who's the CEO, would always just be like, pick one of your friends that you would send this email to and just write it to them. And then like you can extrapolate from there. So whenever I would get stuck, I'm like, hey, Jay, like you're probably blah, 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 blah. This is why you should check out this landing page software. And it's not like just some like witty and clever joke and all of this stuff you're throwing in. It's like, write it for one person. I think that's, to do what you're saying, to be able to get into that mindset of like meet them where they're at. And then you can kind of like take it from there and move the conversation in the direction you're trying to take it. But you can't just come in cold with, well, it's about me and it's about my company and my clothing brand. It's like, no, it's about your customer. Like help them. And then they'll be more receptive to what you're trying to say to them.
Yeah, totally agree.
The last kind of thing I wanted to talk to you about is your referral program. So you guys have built that, again, talking about these little things that you guys do that seem to be really effective for you. You mind going into that and what the thinking is and how it works and some of the results maybe?
Sure. So we have, I think, a relatively common structure to our referral program. If you get people to sign up with your code, you essentially get a point. And once you reach certain tiers on that structure, you get different rewards. So early on, they're digital rewards, like an exclusive plan for like a hike in Austin that we're never going to send out through the normal nudge, to like a traditional sticker sheet, to more like personalized rewards. So I think if you get 20, we create a custom plan for you. So we like give you this form to tell us what you want. We'll create something for you. And it's been really effective, though. To get into the detail, like in our newer cities, half of our growth is coming from like direct attribution to this formal referral program, like half our total growth. And like that's crazy. Like it wasn't like that when we first launched it. And one thing that I'm like kind of trying to grapple with is the fact that like we do a lot of feedback gathering about this program as well. And most people say they don't care about the rewards. They say, oh, I shared it with my friends because I like the nudge. But that doesn't mean it's not useful. I think the referral program is giving people like people like the nudge, and you're just like, oh, you like the nudge? Like here's an envelope to give to your friends. And so I think it's driving a lot more organic growth than it would, in the absence of it. But I think at the end of the day, like it's mostly through our product, and that kind of frustrates me because I want them to be like, oh, I really wanted that reward for 10 referrals, and so I tried really hard to get it, and that would tell me like, yes, we have the right reward, but they're like, the rewards are whatever, I'm just kind of participating because I like the product pretty much.
Yeah, and I think like sharing the nudge helps you kind of get that like personal reputation in your friend group or at your office as like you're almost the one that's now the planner friend where it's like, oh, I got the hookup. Like, let me send it to you. When I signed up, I think before I ever, besides like the introductory messages, before I ever like got an actual plan, I think I already got 5 of my friends to sign up because I just like copied it and then sent it. And I'm like, yo, Giles, you got to sign up for this. Jay, you got to sign up for this. Like, this is cool. It's going to send you stuff that's going on in Austin. We can all do it together. And it's like, okay, boom, done. And yeah, I think you guys just did a really cool job with that. What are have you guys run into certain challenges or things that like you think like, man, this would be so easy to do if we were doing it with email, but now we have to get creative since we don't have the ability to do that? Are there certain things, or has it just kind of all been upside?
Well, you have a much smaller canvas to work with, so it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So that text that you read about how we were pivoting to respond to coronavirus, man, we spent hours and hours and hours like fine tuning that and getting feedback on it from people. I think there's like there's a famous quote about this. It's a president, and it's something like, if I if I had an hour to talk, I could be ready in 10 minutes, but I only get 5 minutes to give this speech. So I need like 5 hours to prepare, you know, and the sentiment is like, it just takes so much more time to be concise and to prepare to do that right. So, yeah, it's harder for sure. It takes more time that would have taken 10% as long to prepare, telling people how we're responding to coronavirus in the text. But it's also a good nudge for us as a team to like keep our thinking extremely simple and keep our storytelling really simple.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any resources for writing or communicating, whether it's like books or people you follow or anything like that that you think would be helpful for people? Or is it just you got to put in the reps?
It's a really good question. There was a time when I tried to look for resources on this, but it's interesting. There isn't like a craft for like, I guess advertising potentially, but telling a story in like, you know, one paragraph. There's no master class for that. And so
maybe haikus or something.
Yeah, I looked into like, there's something called like micro storytelling or something where it is like these super short stories that I was looking to for inspiration. But I mean, one thing I haven't talked about is that we do view each text as a small story about you. And so it's like the first part is, you know, setting the stage. Here's what's going on in your life. The second part is like the challenge that you're encountering. And the third part is like our solution to that and sort of like overcoming that. So you can maybe say this is like distilling the hero's journey down into like the smallest possible components of it. But the short answer is no, we haven't found anything like really, really super helpful for text.
Yeah. No, I love that though. That's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like, even if you only have 3 lines, there can be a beginning, a middle, and end. There can be the situation, the problem, and then the solution, and being able to bake that in. And yeah, it just forces you to be better and you to be creative. And okay, I have this tiny block of text. How do I fill that with all of the stuff that I'm trying to do? How do I cut every superfluous word or something like that? I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, for sure.
So running through just to summarize kind of what those key points are for the text. So it's you're starting off with meeting the customer where they're at. You're giving them kind of addressing the problem that they're running into, and then offering the solution. I also think the way you guys offer the solution is really interesting, where you're very, very detailed. Like you don't leave a lot to chance or for people to just not end up doing it, where you're not saying, hey, here's a great spot to go for sunset and grab yourself a book. You're like, this is the bookstore you can go to. Click here to get a Google sheet with a list of the top books from our team. And these are like the 3 bookstores in Austin or something like that. So again, are there any rules or things from your kind of communication Bible that go towards like, how do we make sure it's as specific as possible so people will follow through on this?
Yeah, we have a rule called no Googling, which means that if we text you anything and you need to Google something to follow through, then we won't send it to you. And it's just like a really, really useful rule for us. So yeah, you brought up some good examples. Like, you know, if we're texting you to go on a hike, you know, we don't want you to have to Google the trail. We don't want you to have to Google which hike is which, you know, we don't want you to have to Google which trails to go on. We don't want you to Google whether parking is going to be open or not. You know, we don't want you to Google like even like how much an Uber is going to cost to go there. Like sometimes we'll share that information. Because really like, you know, it's just removing barriers for people. And it like blows my mind, like thinking about, you know, like the old platform that we used to have are a lot of these websites where it's like, oh yeah, like go do this hike. But people don't think that way. Like people don't just like think, oh, I'm going to go do that hike right now. And I walk out my door and get in my car. You know, there's like a threshold of confidence that people need to follow through on an action. And so we want to like go even beyond that and just like hit that 100% so that there's just no barriers for people.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much for hopping on. People are loving this in the comments, and seriously, this is a game changer. This is so good, makes sense. I'm totally the nudge, lol. Awesome. Yes, there will be a replay. I'll be sending that out later today for everybody, so you guys can check it out there. Very insightful. Thank you very much, John. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like there is so much more here. I wish we could dive all the way into that Bible that you guys put together, because there's already a lot of communication wisdom that you've given everybody here. Love the point about writing to a friend. And yeah, thank you so much. Is there any last things that you want to leave people with, so they can, what can they do? Like, what's one thing they can do to start writing or communicating better with their customers?
Start by thinking only about your customer. Like whatever you're trying to convert, put that aside for a second and just think about your customer and in detail. Like, and this is hard. Like, it's hard thinking, to go from like a friend who understands there's a distinction we talk about, which is like, there's like Phil Dunphy, who like thinks he understands his kids, but he doesn't. And then there's like people who actually understand their friends, and it just takes nuance. You have to really get in the details. And the highest level of advice that I can share from the nudge for anyone who are doing marketing in any form is just understand your customer and start there in as much detail as you can.
That's awesome. Forget that you're a company and just think about where they're at. And Steven just left a comment. I'm writing a newsletter at the moment, and this has helped a lot. Reframing it as if it's to a friend has already removed some mental blocks. That's awesome. Hey, we can help one person. That's super cool. And I think we helped a lot more than that. So John, thank you once again for coming on. This was a lot of fun for me, and I think people got a ton of value out of this. We'll be sending out a replay, getting this out to a lot more people as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was really fun.
Awesome. Take care. Stay safe. I hope you and the company stay safe and well. I look forward to my next nudge, and everybody sign up for the nudge. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. John, thanks again. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.